No, is this on?
Yes, it is. I don't want to turn my email up on,
Then we'll do my presentation from my computer, don't worry.
okay,
Hmm?
but I need to send Jen the link.
Why don't you send a link to Candace and then she could forward it to it
Okay.
and strip away your email.
Oh, it's on? Oh.
Just give me 1 second. Send the link to Jen. Let's start it here. Will we be able to show, will we be able to see the screen, if we do a share screen for the? Yeah, he should. He should be able to see it there.
Yeah, if you share screen,
And then share that one screen with the presentation.
share the one to the left on the browser, do share. And then if you move tabs, so you go to the presentation, then I'll be able to see.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Alright, really good.
You may want to turn on your volume just in case he says something, because then we'll be able to hear him. So your volume's off on your laptop.
I'm not, the laptop's.
Oh, it's not connected, okay.
It's.
So you'll have to
computer.
start the video so the owl, it'll use the owl's.
Okay.
Very good.
But no Jim.
Not yet.
There.
There he is.
There. Audio's
Sounds like you're there, Jan, or is that somebody else?
it's
wrapping?
connecting.
That's connected.
Audio's connecting.
Bing, it says. Hi Jim, are you with us?
Carry on.
Okay, there he is. We called the meeting to order and there's no public comments, so we're gonna go to roll call, if we would.
Trustee Martin,
Here.
trustee Silver,
Here.
trustee Osterling,
Here by Zoom.
gotcha.
And I'm sure the minutes will reflect that. Okay, approval of minutes December 6th.
Move to approve?
I'll second. I don't know, if I'm not allowed to second?
You can, I thought you were looking at him.
No, I seconded
Okay,
it, 'cause I didn't think he could.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, great, but then I got the shake, so I thought. Okay, see, I'm married as long as I've been, I'm very sensitive. All these slight movements, there's disturbance in the force, you know, and I'm like, okay. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any comment or questions, corrections or additions? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, those are approved. We are on work compensation loss portfolio transfer opportunity. I'm gonna turn it over
We're gonna-
indirectly through Jose to
Well,
VP
we'd like
Jones,
to-
who can turn it over to whoever.
Welcome our Keenan partners back out, who spent some time not only reviewing the last board meeting and other questions that we had, but have some updated information to run you all through this evening. So,
Thank you very much. So again, I'm Brad Keenan with Keenan Associates. Great seeing you guys again. Some of this information is, it's the same thing that you saw, but we tried to answer the questions that you three had from the last board meeting, or from the last committee meeting. So just kind of as a reset, a lost portfolio transfer, it would be Pasadena paying a reinsurance carrier to take on all of the district's by old I mean pre-2021, workers' compensation liabilities. So again, very similar to what we showed last time. The reason I say pre-7/1/21 is because on July 1st, 2021, the district joined a JPA called PIPS, which is essentially a fully insured, what we call a $1 program, meaning Pasadena does not have any financial responsibility or liabilities with this program. The JPA takes on the responsibility. You and 414 other colleges and school districts share in that risk, and you leverage the buying power of, again, 414 other members versus prior to 7/1/21, which is what the arrow moving to the left is. Pasadena was what we refer to as a self-insured entity. From 1983 up until 6/30/21, Pasadena had anywhere between $100,000 or $500,000 self-insured retention, meaning every single workers' compensation claim that Pasadena had, the district was on the hook for the first anywhere between $100,000 to $500,000. It changed year to year depending on the insurance market, depending on a wide variety of things. What we're talking about today, again, is just the old claims from, I think it's 12/31/83 up until 6/30/21. Those claims which represent about, there's a range, represents anywhere between about $5 million to $8 million, depending on the probability level. You have the opportunity to pay someone to take on those responsibilities, the liabilities, because as of now, those liabilities are sitting on your books. And they will in perpetuity or until the claims close or until the claimant dies. So the questions that we had from the last meeting was, what steps did Keenan take to ensure Pasadena and others are receiving the best terms from the lost portfolio transfer carrier? Before, I'm going to answer that by kind of saying, when we as Keenan approach this with the marketplace, we come with terms and conditions that we want. Mainly, we want unlimited aggregate protection, meaning no matter, once Pasadena or the other entities pay their premium, you are off the hook. That if your premium is $5 million, these claims could end up costing $50 million. It doesn't matter. You've paid your premium, you wiping your hands clean, you're done. The reason we've asked for unlimited aggregate protection is because in the past, carriers have only been willing to give, let's say, 200% of the premium. So if you pay $5 million in premium, they're only going to give you up to $10 million on to kind of cap their risk. We wanted to have unlimited protection. The other thing that we wanted, certain terms and conditions, was that there was a fixed payment and it was a carrier that was very financially strong. The reason we chose Swiss Re, so kind of closing the loop, the reason that we chose Swiss Re is they were the carrier that said we are willing to give you those terms and conditions. Other carriers were not willing to. So Swiss Re we have a ton of experience with. I mentioned the PIPS JPA that Pasadena is a part of. They are the largest reinsurer on that program. So they know Keenan, they know how we operate claims, they know the school districts of California, Community College of California, they're very comfortable with it. And that's one of the reasons that they were willing to give us the terms and conditions. One of the other questions that came up during the last meeting was, does Swiss Re and Berkshire Hathaway have any relationship? They are separate entities, separate reinsurance corporations. Any questions regarding that question?
It's just a technicality, but at one time Berkshire owned Swiss Re, even though they'd be a separate subsidiary. Are they still a subsidiary, or are they now independent entirely?
They're independent. Swiss, to my understanding, there's no ownership of in either party either way.
Okay, thank you.
I'm gonna go forward. So the second question that we wanted to answer today was, essentially, what if Pasadena doesn't do this? What's the upside, what's the downside? And so I will admit, I'm quick to admit, we are not financial experts, we are insurance professionals. A lot of the information that we looked at, we actually asked our CFO to give some input because there's a lot of variables within an analysis that John is gonna show you, but I'm first gonna kind of walk you through what we looked at. So when we're looking at what's the upside or what's the downside, we always refer back to an actuarial report. Pasadena has historically received an actuarial report every 2 years, and it is essentially an estimate saying that, according to this, anywhere between $5.1 and $7.4 million, that's the amount that Pasadena could potentially pay in work comp claims to close all of the current claims that are known or unknown from the self-insured years. We have been looking at the discounted, which is using interest, so anywhere between 5.071 at a central estimate up to $6.39 million. So what those probability levels, I'm sorry.
Wait, your first, oh, there it is, 5 point.
So in what those numbers represent is, according to an actuary, a 10% probability level means that 1 in every 10 years, that 4.4 million on the right-hand column is gonna be enough. So that's a huge gamble. In our world, when we're talking to school districts who are self-insured or are looking to set up their budgets, us and most JPAs don't recommend anywhere below 70%. Because otherwise you're taking a risk, according to, just as we've seen workers' compensation claims go. So when we're looking at this, the downside is according to an actuary, the downside would be $6.39 million. But basically the actuary believes that there's a 2% chance that the amount of claims Pasadena is responsible for are going to cost more than $6.39 million. Central estimate is 50%, meaning flip of a coin, $5.071 million, assuming 2.5% interest is going to be enough. So anywhere between, I like to bring my eyes up to that 70%, so that 5.3 million. That 5.3 million is represented by the 66 current open claims, with the furthest claim, the oldest claim, I should say, being in 1999. Now you may have a question, well, why does the loss portfolio transfer go all the way back to 1983? The reason being is that according to the actuary, claims going back as far as 1983 have a chance of reopening. So an example is, you could, and this is a real example of Pasadena, is a claimant tripped and fell on campus, literally tripped on a leaf. This person needed a knee replacement surgery. After the knee replacement surgery, they realized that the knee was infected. Pasadena was now on the hook to pay for the second knee replacement. And so things like that, unfortunately, do happen. And with these years as a self-insured entity, Pasadena is going to be financially responsible for that knee for the rest of his or her life. So when you're looking at paying someone to take these claims on, it's those 66 open claims, and then anywhere of those 135, what we refer to as administratively closed. That means for Keenan's purposes, as your work comp administrator, we haven't heard from them, they haven't received any service in a while, any medical treatment in a while, so we close them, but that doesn't mean they can't reopen them, they meaning an injured worker.
And just to add, if I may, that specific claim is actually the largest claim in your self-insured timeframe history, which you would think maybe a knee replacement or a second knee replacement might not surpass that $500,000 mark. However, this is the largest claim that you've seen in your self-insurance time, because even though it's just a knee replacement, the complications that happen with it were so severe that it was just very large, and it's just interesting to keep in mind.
So with work comp, if the injury happened to a Pasadena employee while he or she was employed, you're on the hook for that in perpetuity.
Even if he or she ever needs a third knee replacement or any type of treatment for that injury in the future, it's all a liability of Pasadena's.
Moving to the next slide. So again,
Is this state by state? Is this a California state?
yes, every state has its own workers' compensation rules. California is what's called a no-fault state, meaning if I were an employee of Pasadena and I were on my phone walking to my car and I'm not looking and I hit my head on a wall and I'm not being the smartest person, I can still file a work comp claim as an employee of Pasadena if I were. So yeah, there's monopolistic states, there's no-fault states, there's a few different models that states use. California unfortunately has the most expensive model.
Which is no cap on any medical expenses on any claim.
Yeah. And so as a self-insured entity from those prior years, the district is on the hook for all of those expenses that are incurred. Up to a certain threshold, that's what the insurance is for. But as we've seen with medical inflation and things getting more expensive, it's a lot easier to get to that $500,000 than it was 25 years ago. And so the risk is, I'm going to show you this slide. So if we could look at the slide of 2003, 2004, the actuary believes that there's about $100,000 or $80,000 in what's called IBNR. IBNR is incurred but not reported. Basically, it's an insurance nerd jargon term where it's claims that, or expenses that the actuary estimates will come up. Either someone reopens a new claim, someone has an infection on his or her knee replacement, anything like that, Pasadena is still on the hook for. So
define reserves.
Reserves are current open claims, and our claims examiners believe that those dollars are going to be what are required to close the claim. So for example, let's say I'm an employee of Pasadena, I trip and fall, and I call Keenan as the examiner saying, hey, I trip and fell, I think I broke my leg. The examiner would put a reserve at $30,000. That means the examiner thinks after medical treatment, temporary total disability payments, that $30,000 is what it's going to take to close the claim. So the purple, the reason we're seeing a lot of purple in the more recent years is because there's still there are still open claims from those years, which is expected. Workers' compensation claims, they can stay open for as long as the person's alive. And that's why you see like the oldest claim going back to 1999. That as long as that injured worker wants to keep their claim open, there's nothing we can do.
So what would be some of those purple lines going all the way back? It looks like the oldest purple is 0102.
We apologize, it looks like it's small. This would be a better way of showing that 1999 is the oldest claim where there's one claim in 1999 that's still open. It's hard to see it on this slide just because the axes that we use. Yeah. But this would be more of this. These are all the open claims that exist.
And it is important to note that just because these are the open claims that exist, the next slide will show that there is still potential for claims to open back through 1983.
Yeah.
So anecdotally, what are the nature of the kind of things that might be in those bars in 1999 to say 2011 that you would still have open claims going back to that bar? Just a flavor.
A lot of those times we'll see back and knees are the two big things that we continuously see pop up, or shoulders, because for example, if you hurt your back and you get a surgery, for anyone who's had a back surgery, they'll know that even if you have a surgery, the pain isn't doesn't go away, and you'll generally wanna keep that open, because you're gonna have continuous pain, you may need to get physical therapy from a back surgery years later. So those are the types of things that we see that are still open.
I have all three of those, I just didn't. I run a basketball court.
I'm a knee guy, so I've had a lot of knee surgeries.
All right, and I continue on, thank you, that's all.
Thank you. So one thing that I did, so we were talking about now kind of the downside of it. So on the actuarial report, we were showing the actuary was assuming 2.5% interest. If we were to look at that in a vacuum, we'd say, oh, 2.5% interest rate's a bit high, you can get, 5.5% by just putting your money in a T-bill. The reality is, based on what Pasadena is able to access, the historical 5-year average for Pasadena's money, even with the last few quarters being as high as we've seen in interest rates since the 70s, it's still only averaging about 1.5%. So the reason we're showing that is because the money is what the actuary is estimating is aggressive.
We recently pulled our money from the very low interest rate with the county. Is this correct?
Oh, we're still with the county.
Until you're
Fiscally independent.
Oh, but I thought we pulled our investments. But
Not
I
yet.
thought-
We hope to. The only investments that are currently outside of LACO are our PARS, the irrevocable trust. Those accounts are outside of the county. But our intention, as we'll talk about in a little bit, of going fiscally accountable and then fiscally independent would give us the ability to invest our own funds.
it was
Soon.
And I think that's probably one of the reasons why you would, is because you're still, as high as interest rates have been, looking at the long-term span, it's only 1.5%.
Yeah.
And the reason we kind of wanted to pull back the scope of not just looking at 1 year is that these work comp claims, as we see with the claims still open from 1999, we could see these claims open for another 30 years, 30, 40, I mean, it really depends on how long the person stays alive or if they even want to close their claim. So in the most recent years, where the highest interest rate since I've been alive, it's still only a 1.5% average year to year. And
Is
so,
anyone actively trying to close these claims by negotiating with the individuals?
yeah, that's one of the things that our claims team is always trying to do, is close claims by a variety of different ways. One is what's called a CNR, a compromise and release. That is essentially, you're giving someone a check and they are completely done. There's nothing they can ever do again related to that claim. It's, here's a check, you sign a contract, Pasadena's off the hook. There's another way, which is called a stipulated, where basically they will close their claim other than future medical expenses related to a very limited threshold. So we are always trying to do that. Compromise and release is something that every work comp examiner is trying to do. Because in work comp, the thing is, the best claim is a closed claim.
But that's you, Keenan, that's doing that.
Because we are your claims examiners currently, yes.
And not the insurance company who's paying.
Correct. PIPS is, so for the post 7/1/21 claims, PIPS is essentially the insurance carrier. PIPS is the joint powers authority with Pasadena and the 414 other school districts.
And since since 2021, July 2021, almost 40% of your open claims have been closed. It's quite a high number.
Just just understanding how the pieces fit, you're negotiating to close some of these claims. So let's say you negotiate for me and 100K signed and sealed, I'll release. I would assume the insurance carrier at the time is funding that
Yes.
100K
PIPS is. The JPA is funding it.
going forward. But what about pre
7/1/21,
Yeah.
it was Pasadena.
we're self-insured.
It is.
Yes.
So
It
we
It
would-
is,
Yes,
it is,
it
yes,
is,
it is.
yes.
Okay, so we would be funding the 100,000.
Yes.
Correct.
But you are still in the pre-21 trying to negotiate settlements.
Oh, yeah, oh, yeah,
that you're
absolutely.
presenting.
100%, yeah.
Which come on the board agendas.
Yeah.
So that's, and I see these things all the time, and now I'm getting a kind of.
Yes, yes.
See the connections.
So anything within, as self-insured entities, Pasadena did this, a lot of other districts that we, is, yeah,
And
take it to
that makes,
board.
because we're
Yeah.
self-insured, it makes sense that you are negotiating it, not.
Mhm.
Yeah, but in that situation, we need their approval, and then we
Right,
get.
okay,
the
well,
board's
thank you for
approval.
that
Yeah.
clarity.
Sorry if I was unclear with that. So that's kind of what we're looking at in terms of interest rates. So John is going to go through an analysis kind of showing if Pasadena doesn't do this, doesn't do the lost portfolio transfer, and the $4.9 million that Pasadena had in its balance at the end of fiscal year '23, essentially if that just accrues interest, how much is that inevitably going to be? And we also tried to do our best of saying, you can't just see if it's gonna grow, because we're gonna be pulling money out of it to pay claims as it grows. So the caveats are, there are a ton of variables that if we were to build a perfect scientific model, there would be a lot of variables that go into this, but we did our best just to give you an idea of what it would potentially look like.
And to really answer what happens if we hold on to this $4.9 million principal, if it continues to accrue interest, what does that look like? We did our best to model and attempted to model a hybrid that I'll explain. This really shows here, if you were to have no drawdown of your principal, what $4.9 million looks like at that 1.5% average return over 20 years. Obviously, this is not necessarily reality, so we'll go into showing a couple of different models that are a conservative approach, aggressive approach, and a recommended approach. So this one,
We're on page 10 if you're going through everything. Yeah.
and what we've attempted to model here is a hybrid of a time value of money and a principal drawdown, so that you can see with caveats that these are significant assumptions. This is very granular. What happens on one specific claim could change this projection pretty drastically. So, but we wanted to make sure we model it out as best as you can. The green represents the drawdown, and what we've done is we've used a level amount of the actuarials, in this case with the central estimate, $5.88 million drawn level over 20 years. We did use about double that for the first 2 years, as we can kind of project what type of cost you might predict to see in the first 2 years. I believe that the first year assumed about $750,000, the second year about $500,000, because those are like what you're looking at average-wise now. And then the remaining years, 3 through 20, is level drawn out at $328,000 in this case.
And that's kind of why we're saying this is an estimate, is that there's no way to estimate when someone is going to reopen a claim, or even a claim that's open, when they're going to use surgeries, or get a new surgery, or get a new treatment. So we tried to make it as level as we could. In reality, you could have $1 million one year, 0 the next year.
And
I don't understand.
Let me ask a question, and I might be jumping ahead. You have the same graph with different rates of return higher than the 1.5% that we showed.
We kept 1.5% as the same interest rate throughout the projections, but we can provide that. We wanted to look at the most, not conservative, but most realistic based on LACO's numbers.
So it seems that you have two different y-axis numbers, one for the purple and one for the green, but the green doesn't, we don't see so the purple bar for year one is at 5 million, and if you're assuming 700,000 in costs, oh, is it the space that's not taken by the green that's our expense, and the green is what money we have?
So
I
the
don't-
green is representing the principal with drawdown. The maroon purple is the same representing on the prior slide, which shows no drawdown at all. And that just shows what your current principal is. And really it's just there, it helps, it helps to visualize the graph a bit better. But it's green that shows the principal with the estimated claims pay down.
Okay,
In year one, yes.
so that's how
That-
much money,
Would be taken
Out
in the
left.
model, the delta between the purple and the green in year one.
is the
Is-
blank space.
Is exactly the amount we included as the claims that would be paid in the first year.
That part I knew,
Yeah.
but I just didn't know what.
Yeah.
So,
But after year one, that is not true, because we're still just showing the interest on, as the purple. But after year one on the green, you look at, so year two, you look at year one as kind of the basis, and then year three, you go back to year two.
So let me say how I view this, based on all you just said, and you can see if I'm right. So I view the net green number as our principal balance after the scenarios that play out year by year, to which on the first one, you're saying that if we started with $5 million, by year 15, our money's gone.
According
Even
to,
at a 1.5% interest.
and that's why we wanted to throw caveat after caveat, because you're not in, this wouldn't happen. I think the 4.9 million is enough. I think it's plenty. We wanted to give some standardized models to help
Right.
you understand.
what were you assuming the annual average expenses were again?
So it was,
328,000 for the central estimate, and each of the models will have a different level drawdown. Again, it is extremely unlikely that you would have a level drawdown over 20 years.
Right,
So,
And I did some high-end rough estimates similar to this, just on my own. I think I did it the next day after we did it while it was still fresh in my mind. The other huge variable here, of which there obviously are many, is the 20 years.
correct.
And what the conclusion that I came to, as you take the amount of the potential claims that are funded, your 6 million, your 7 million, and almost more significant than the interest rate is the factor of, are you paying out 7 million over 20 years, 25 years, 30 years? I did one with 40 years.
right.
And as you shorten that time parameter, it almost doesn't matter what the interest rate is, you're better taking the deal because of the rapid expenditure of whether it's 4 million or 7 million. You know, these are showing us whether it's 4 million or 7 million. I tried to do one that showed me what if it's 20 years or 30 years, and found that to be almost more significant than
The 20.
Yeah,
than
the longer
than
you,
pay-
yeah,
than the
exactly.
payout.
Mhm.
You know, it's the difference between 177K a year versus 320 on yours, and I had one year with 360, but whatever. So the biggest variable in my mind is, and of course, we're all assuming these level payments, which of course is
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
but really is more, you know, how long it is more than that, and then to the extent that obviously there's gonna be more at the beginning,
Mhm.
eroding the principal sooner.
And that's why years was one of the variables, medical inflation, interest rates. If you do go fiscally independent, we would change the 1.5 to hopefully 3, or whatever you can get. There were a lot of variables.
Including old claims reopening or not opening, and legislation that could be enacted at any point in time. There's just so many.
The buyout, if we take it, I think from my notes last time was 4.898. Is that, I'm sure it's in here, is that still the buyout today?
It's 4.838, so that is,
4.838.
that's the premium. With the caveat, any claims that have been paid from May 23 up until, let's say the district decides to do it up until December, the carrier would net out the claim payment. So let's say it's 4.8, but we've actually paid $1 million on your behalf to close those claims. Premium is gonna drop down $1 million, because you're not gonna be charging you twice essentially for it.
Yeah, right.
How did you get the figure, 328,000, like over the past 10 years, what has been our average claim
So
per year?
that 328 is not related to your average. It is based on the central estimate 5.88 million divided over 20 years. Just the actuary believes that there's a 55% chance your total claims will cost 5.588. And so the first 2 years do take into account what you could expect cost-wise these next 2 years. Again, there's still kind of ballparks, but there were larger reductions in the first 2 years. And then the remainder is, equals $328,000 per year to equal a total of 5.88 million. So
The next few are kind of looking at the same thing, changing the probability levels, which means it's increasing the amount that would be evenly allocated throughout the years.
And it's running out sooner.
Yeah, which is, but to your point, it's, if you extended the time, yes, it would extend the even allocation, which would mean it goes further out. The reason we want to show a caveat with this is the 4.9 million is enough. We're not here saying you guys, the district's in trouble at all. We're just trying to show what it would look like on the upside, on the downside, if you do nothing, or what the options would be. 70%, like I said, is where we would generally recommend it, and that is where, when we have been consulting with Pasadena during self-insured years, we always recommended the district fund at 70%, meaning that the money set aside is enough 7 out of 10 times. That's kind of the piece of, if you don't do it, what does that look like?
And why is Swiss Re taking the money?
Swiss Re can,
Because they assume they're getting a higher rate of return?
100%.
Yeah.
Because where Pasadena gets 1.5%
Right.
investing, or having money sit in Laco, they are backed by hedge funds, which they take 5 million, the 4.9 or whatever the money is, and they can invest it in anything and everything. And hedge funds that are making 20-25% rate of return. So they'll pay the work comp claims all day, they just want the premium now.
Okay, now I get it.
Yeah.
That was the.
That's the insurance industry in a
uh-huh,
nutshell, right there. Yeah.
Okay.
They're all backed by hedge firms and private equity, and they use the insurance premiums to invest. I mean, that's what Allstate does, that's what State Farm does, that's
But
insurance.
that we're getting such a lamentable rate makes it a good business deal for both of us.
Yeah. Any other questions on what we went through? A lot of the slides are more of what we talked about last time, essentially saying instead of Pasadena being on the hook for the first 100 or $500,000, Swiss Re is on they're financially responsible.
Now, my underlying question is why would somebody do this?
They want their money.
No.
They want the premium. Yeah.
So that has been well answered.
Yeah.
And I feel confident.
Okay. Yeah, that's, insurance companies aren't in it for the good of the cause, believe it or not. I'd love to think that they were. But there is, in these situations, there's definitely value to organizations like Pasadena, because you can financially wipe yourselves clean of all those responsibilities, and and now moving forward, PIPS is responsible, so it's kind of like starting, bringing everything back to zero, which is a great thing. Yeah, a lot of this is kind of just saying that Swiss Re is gonna be financially responsible, a lot of these same things, so they're responsible. Keenan is still gonna be administering your claims. This isn't like we're gonna have some company in Switzerland now administering your claims. It's the same claims examiners that your injured workers still work with, so there's not gonna be any disruption on that end. It's really a financial transaction.
Just to repeat that, Keenan will still be managing the client.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and that is one of the Swiss Re's requirements or conditions, because they know how we administer claims, they're very comfortable with it, and they trust Keenan to do it, not other organizations. I'll beat our drum a little bit. So yeah, kind of going to the last slide, the premium on the proposal does show $4.838 million. $4,838,000, $625,000. Any claims that would be paid from early May up until conceptually early February, assuming this goes forward soon.
24.
Yeah. Oh,
That's
sorry.
24.
I gotta change my brain.
That's okay.
Yes, until 2/1/24 would be netted out from that $4.838 million. And that's all calculations that we would be doing, and then at that point, once Swiss Re is taking on financial responsibility, you could have 200 claims reopened, and it ends up costing the district $15 million. You've paid your premium.
So at this point, I would normally ask the administration their comments and recommendations.
I mean, from our perspective, we're supportive of the concept. One, it helps us sort of clean up the previous self-insured claims and have one way in which we're just managing. You know, you see on your board reports, there are two different sort of ways in which we try to express to you when we're making these self-insured payments. It makes sense from just sort of like efficiency standpoint. You know, we have the same way that we're managing, and we have the same partnership to help work us. I mean, we meet monthly or quarterly with Keenan, Darlene bearing the brunt of those wonderful phone calls, but it has a consistent process. There's a lot of unpredictability here in terms of not only where we're going, you know, from a budget perspective, we have the funds available. It makes a lot of sense to just not have this delineation between pre-19, 2021 to
And just to add to, just to kind of put it into perspective, for instance, of these claims, just one employee of those claims has cost $557,000.
through multiple.
And they're not closed. 8 of those are still open. We've only been able to close 2. So just to, that, and that's just one person, right? So it just has that potential, and which is why we went with PIPS. It's a zero deductible program. You know, you'll no longer see the settlement authorities on the board when we're trying to close these. They'll manage it, we'll still be involved in it, they'll manage the claims, but we will no longer have any financial responsibility to it.
Question for Candace, what bucket of money would we pay this premium from?
We have a self-insured fund set aside that has that $4.9 million in available. I think it's fund 70,
It's 62.
62.
Yeah,
I
62.
was gonna say
So-
72, but 62.
Yeah.
What's the insurance premium going to be with PIPS?
So the insurance premium that we pay with PIPS every year, I wanna say last year was 2.4 million.
I think your rate is like $1.30, so PIPS has only moved forward.
Yeah.
But it's a percentage of payroll viewed as a dollar fee, it's like $1.30 per $100 of payroll. That is how workers' comp premium is calculated.
And we do twice a year, we do estimated payroll projections. Jesse helps me with that, provides me those numbers, so we're constantly giving them
Is that
correct
a
data.
regulated figure, or that's what our but PIPS is going to charge.
That's what PIPS charges based off of what reinsurance we're able to procure. And then we spread that premium amongst 414 districts, not evenly. Because the idea with JPAs, just like PIPS or SWAC for property and liability, is that if Pasadena has good claim experience, you shouldn't subsidize other members. So you have an experience modification
Yeah.
factor which says, okay, if Pasadena's is 80, you're getting a 20% discount on the rate because you shouldn't pay as much as El Camino if El
Right.
Camino has twice as many claims as you. But you still leverage the buying power of the group.
Do you have to break down the job classifications by different work comp rates for each job classification?
We don't have to because everyone who works for school districts or community colleges has one job classification. One class code.
Okay.
Pardon me, let me go back to my question to Candace, because her answer, there was a lot of background.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Candace, no, my apologies. Do we have, where would we pay this 4.9 approximately premium from, what category, what fund?
We already have a,
61.
yeah,
61.
we already have a fund designated, set aside, and it's currently Fund 61, and the funds are available there. So it's not gonna come out of the general fund, it wouldn't come out of capital, anything like that, it wouldn't affect anything
How much
else.
is in Fund 61 right now compared to the premium that we would pay?
8 million. Right?
In Fund 61.
As of today, we have 8 million in that fund. Just call me
Okay.
amazing, Jim, that
So
I know that.
if we paid this premium, we would be able to free up the balance of that fund for other purposes.
That's right.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Or keep it and use it to pay work comp for the next
Yeah.
couple years, and pay the premiums off,
The
whatever
premium.
cash flow it's gonna help.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Some, yeah. That's Candace's world, I won't touch it.
I have no further questions.
Jim, you have any further questions?
No, very good presentation, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
you
you.
have any
I'd
comments?
be interested to see the same presentation with a higher return, but John, as you've already mentioned, I don't think the return is the big factor.
It's more the years, but obviously they're both significant, and so I'll tell you the way I view this. So I look at this as what are our alternatives for placement of the cash and the best return, some of the scenarios she presented. And when you compare to what we get at the LA County Treasury, we'll never be able to match a rate of return under any time period significant enough to not do the deal, as I would think of it. We do have other alternatives where we could place the money and make a better return. For example, our PARS investments, if we were to place money in PARS over the last 5 years, we made 4.5%. I would hope over 10 years, we'd end up closer to 7 or 8% in PARS. Obviously, there's complications in doing that because those are irrevocable trusts that have to be used for very specific purposes, though the obligation there is so immense that the money can transfer around. You can put it in PARS and then not fund other things and that you would normally put money into for retirement funds and move it around. A little bit of complication there in getting it. You still then go back to the time parameter, and if you're talking, something like 20 years or less, it becomes very difficult, almost at any rate, to maybe beat the deal. Obviously, the insurance, as pointed out, is going to make significantly better returns than we're ever going to make because of the opportunities they have and the time parameter they have to invest the money that we don't. So laying aside the complications of the math for a moment, which in general appear to be favorable, you then get to the unknown unknowns, which is why you buy insurance. And so, as pointed out here, there's numerous unknowns that we could not even be thinking of, like one single claim one black swan, as they would say, can throw you into a difficult situation. So then you finally get to the final point of why most people buy insurance at all, and even if we could, under best case scenarios and a lot of work and effort in moving money around, match a fund rate that's as significantly good as the insurance, you really buying peace of mind. Insurance, we realize they're charging us a premium based on the fact that, if it's fire insurance for your home, there is some house in the neighborhood that's going to go up in flames every so many years. It's going to cost them a couple $1 million, but you aggregate that over the risk of so many that are paying the premium, and makes the amount that I'm paying, knowing that I'll get my $2 million if it happens to be me. It's a reverse lotto in a way. That's why you buy insurance, right? So I would be supportive under the deal as it is, as it helps mitigate a lot of the unknown unknowns. We should just at least mention, as I think was pointed out, that probably the greatest unknown that we would have is Swiss Re. So at the end of the day, the risk for us is Swiss Re, because we will have paid our $4.8 million. We'll be sleeping well at night as long as Swiss Re is sleeping well at night. And so that's where the financial strength of Swiss Re, if something were to happen to Swiss Re, I'm not sure what would happen to our obligations, or if that would be part of some bankruptcy settlement with Swiss Re or something to that effect.
There are collateralization terms in the contract that is protecting the district from
that occurrence. So that would have been my number one concern.
And that's what we do in PIPs as well, and the prospective insurance, is we make sure that they're not just taking it and using everyone's money.
All right. So that would be my best concern, because
That's a good question, I hadn't thought of that.
well, you can say they're a behemoth and all of that, but you go back 50 years and you look at the magnificent 7 stocks that are obviously all tech stocks today. You go back 30 years, they weren't all tech stocks. You go back 60 years, they weren't the same stocks that were, 30 years ago. Life changes, right? So the number one concern I have is Swiss Re could be a behemoth today, but it doesn't mean they're going to be a behemoth 10 years from now. But if there's contractual obligations there where we're free and clear, that's what happens. So,
I'm going to start calling insurance the reverse lotto now.
yeah. So anyway, so I would be in favor, and I really do appreciate the presentation. I appreciate the second time around on it, because it usually takes me several times to get anything. And I'm still working on my children's names. But so I would be one who could make a motion in favor of recommending the concept to the board, or whatever language the administration recommends. And it helps me to have the administration recommending it. I see a lot of efficiency in internal staff time, not having to manage work comp, which I think is another fringe benefit to us. So I would be in favor of the deal. I'll make the motion.
So,
But what motion do you
John,
want?
I won't vote now, but I will, vote in favor of that board.
Thank you, Jim.
The question I would have for you trustees would be, would there be benefit in the other trustees seeing a similar present? I'm just trying to make sure, like, is there a study session that's needed for your colleagues, or is this something that you all believe, based on the Budget and Audit Committee's recommendation, that they would be comfortable supporting?
So, Candace, that's a good question, and if I were a board member that was not on this committee, I would be interested to see this presentation. And I would appreciate very much the recommendation of this committee, but I would be
it's to the good that people fully understand what we're doing, so another trip to Pasadena.
We love it.
Okay, I think it's a good, I think that's a good idea.
I think if I weren't on this committee, I would want to see a high level, very high level
Agreed, yeah, agreed.
presentation.
In short.
And would feel good knowing that this committee took 2 meetings and several hours in each meeting, carefully asking these kinds of questions, and that you came back with, answers to some of the questions that we wrote. So, but obviously 7 might be better than 3 in thinking of something we didn't. So I think a high-level presentation, and whether that is something that can be an information item at a board meeting, and then you don't have enough, there's so little other agenda that it's okay, or whether you think it needs a special meeting. I think I'd leave that to you two to work with the board chair.
Just a little information presentation.
We could
Okay.
make the recommendation from us, in terms of maybe February, a brief study session with the motion I would recommend for today would be a motion to approve a recommendation to the board for the lost portfolio transfer opportunity, for accepting the lost portfolio transfer opportunity with a brief study session for your colleagues. And then we do the study session, go to closed session, and then this would be on our agenda for February.
As
What she said.
As she said, I'm moving. Yeah, good luck to you. So I'll move that.
But we
You want a
probably
second?
should hear it. Let's,
You want her to restate it in,
Candace,
Yeah.
you're gonna have to restate it, please.
150 words instead of
I'm gonna make it more
300?
succinct. Move to approve for recommendation the lost portfolio transfer opportunity for your fellow board members, for the board of trustees.
Can I add one thing? Not to
You
that,
sure
not
can.
that. Because the premium is based off of an actuarial report from 2022. Yeah. Why am I blanking on this?
Something.
Yeah, 2022. The reinsurance carrier may say we need to get a new one. Even if they could say no, we're good with it. Regardless, it would most likely reduce the premium. So if we don't get one, the number is going to be reduced because of the claim payments. If we do get one, it'll likely be reduced because of the claim payments. That's the only
so
caveat.
when it comes to the board, will we have an actual number, or do we need to do a not to exceed?
I would recommend a not to exceed, but we should have, let's say the board is in February, we would have as much information at that board meeting to say, the premium shows 4.8, but claims have been $500,000 paid out, so it's realistically 4.3, whatever the figures may be.
So I don't know how to work all that into the motion.
Does this
Sorry.
I would
motion,
make a motion.
does this motion need a not to exceed, Kat?
Yeah, I was gonna make a motion to approve the recommendation of pursuing the loss portfolio
Transfer
insurance
opportunity.
opportunity with a premium not to exceed 4.9 million. Is that clear?
Sure.
For you? Is that a motion that you can second?
I second that.
Does that work for you?
Everything works for us.
If it comes back- I mean, if it comes back more than that, you're still gonna make a presentation.
Yes.
It's just not gonna have this committee's recommendation. Okay,
Call for the vote?
thank you. I was gonna just say, any further discussion? As if we had. Okay, in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And Jim has already commented on how he views this going forward in full oil. So thank you.
Thank
to
you.
Thank you, sorry we
I
talked a
appreciate
lot.
you guys taking the time to meet with us twice.
We just had to get it clear.
No, it's good.
Thank you.
Thank you so
All right,
much.
we'll see you.
In February.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank
Looking
you.
forward to it.
Now, that brings us to our second item of major significance information, which is our cost and savings of fiscal accountability.
Yes, so Jesse's gonna, this is a presentation that this committee saw previously, just describing fiscal accountability. We inserted 3 slides that gave some cost estimates for both the accountability piece and the fiscal independence. So that you sort of see kind of where we're going and where the operational costs will come, but where we may have some opportunity for investment to cover those. So I'll turn it over to Jesse to walk through those pieces.
We have that, I'm sure, right here, right? Someplace we have a hard copy of this, or?
We'll make sure that you have a hard copy.
Okay.
Walk out. This was delivered in the last meeting. You had a hard copy.
I have the last meeting with me, it's those 3 pages that I wanted to make sure.
So
print it.
it's
I'll print
So we'll,
Just those 3 pages.
the spreadsheets.
Of this here?
Do you want from current slide?
Sure, and then I'll have you go forward.
Well, we
More?
have one.
There you go.
Okay. So here are our current estimates. So the biggest change from this time, the current estimate and last estimate, is that we realized that for us pursuing fiscal accountability, which is the intermediate step before we become fiscally independent, we didn't actually need any consulting assistance. So that was $25,000 under the one-time category. So now we just chew it up as 0. We didn't really need to hire any outside help for us to do that. So that bumped up our estimated savings to $59,000.
I gotta get caught up here, I'm sorry.
So if you walk through the
Yeah.
current costs, it
Okay.
costs us to pay for the paper checks and the check printing, the dedicated printers, our internal auditor, which is required for fiscal accountability, but we would be using existing personnel. There's no new headcount there in order for us to go accountable. There is a one-time charge that we get an independent CPA who comes and reviews, and so that process is actually in progress. The county will be assigning, actually.
they assign the CPA?
Yes,
Oh.
they do.
They
Yes,
assign what
they
we get
do.
to pay for.
But we pay for it. And then the cost savings, the LACO expense vendor and payroll check issuance is about 100. So we believe the district, just moving to accountability, will save about $60,000 per fiscal year. Overall.
So the negative, so actually the 49 and the 1,000 are negative numbers setting against, and the 35,000, so those 3 are deducted out of the 100,000 that we pay now.
Right. Ongoing.
Let me interrupt with a question. Am I looking at the same screen that you guys are looking at there?
I hope.
I'm still looking at the last slide of the,
Their presentation.
Oh.
Maybe stop sharing.
Yeah,
Reshare.
let me.
Thank you, Jillian. Yep. Thank you. Is that better?
Do you see a
Trustee
chart
Austin?
now?
there we go. Thank you.
So that's the savings for the accountability piece that Jesse and team estimated. But that's not really why we're doing this. We want to be fiscally independent at some point. This is just sort of that intermediate step. And so we wanted to walk through, Jesse's going to walk through the 2 pieces of like what it costs to be fiscally independent and then potentially what we would be able to earn with this new investment opportunity that may help.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
So, how often so we're basically what I would call referencing, Okay, I think of our disbursements in the terms of payroll and non-payroll. I think of them as payroll and AP.
Vendors.
Yes, vendor checks.
So is this movement for both payroll and AP or only AP?
So at the current stage for accountability is only AP.
Only AP, so this is referencing only AP. So on the AP side, approximately how often do you run checks or ACH transfers? And approximately how often and how many checks or ACH transfers do you do in a week, month or something?
So we typically run check run 3 times a week. And
Okay.
if it needs be, we'll add to that.
Yeah.
And ACH payments, right now we're doing very limited ACH payment, it's just because it's very difficult and time consuming to set up ACH transaction with LACO. So most of our payments are still in the old brick and mortar paper check type of transaction. Yeah.
If you've ever, let me use a great example, if you've ever received
Thank
your reimbursement for travel, you get a paper check.
Yeah,
Right.
Thank you.
and I would guess going forward, you'd have more capability in Banner to
Correct.
use ACH and you
Right.
file export, import.
Yes.
Yeah, so essentially
Kind of
what's
thing,
going to
which
happen is that,
We're moving to at our company and it's amazing how easy
Yes.
it is.
yeah, but this is why we're doing this, it's for efficiency
Yeah. But,
purposes.
okay, so 3 times a week and about how many disbursements?
So I would say in between, depending on volume, so, well, today, before I walked, between meeting, I just went over there and approved over 200 checks. So that's just only in one run, so if you time 3, we're talking about 500 to 600 checks a week.
Let me ask a question here. I know that this isn't the main motivation for doing this, but that estimated savings. And I see that the existing personnel that handle the internal audit side of this, but would there not be an AP person, whether we're paying this by paper checks or ACH or whatever, would there not be some additional accounting / AP personnel to administrate these payments?
Not necessarily, because our existing structure supports everything that we needed to do for accountability.
Oh.
Actually, for us, it would be less work for us, because we no longer have to transmit the checks that we generated in Banner to LACO and have LACO printed, and having to wait for the checks to come back the next day and starting folding and dispersing. So for us, it's actually, we're gonna save that step.
Okay, so you answered my question, because
Yeah.
just intuitively sitting here saying, stuffing 600 checks, and getting a stamp on them, and getting them in the mail at a post office that isn't frauding checks at the moment, is, gotta take some time. But you're already going through that, you're already,
Yeah,
you're already
You're-
doing that part,
I
they're just
understand.
physically
You're
running
doing the
checks
work.
and bringing them back.
and then just adding another layer on top of that.
Yeah,
that you
okay.
have to
Well,
do
that's
all
the
same
answer.
work
That's
Anyway, whether we cut the checks or they cut the checks.
Yeah, so it's just
Got it.
really the time and ink and equipment to print the
Correct.
checks instead of sending them.
Yeah.
Okay, then that makes sense.
And arguably, it's even less because you don't have to interface and explain all this to an outside
Correct.
third-party pay to
Right.
Got
Yeah,
it.
a perfect
Yeah, okay.
example would be our deposit check for the
For
property
escrow,
we were
right.
purchasing in Rosemead. It was, regardless, we did a lot of preventative measures with the county, letting them know that this transaction possibly will happen and we need a really quick turnaround. And then by the time we submitted the payment, it still got held up. So it delayed, and then we only have a 3-day window to process the deposit. So
Yeah,
Candace had to physically drive down to Newport to hand deliver.
That's where the escrow
Waco
office is.
is part of the problem, part of the solution to getting that done quickly. Understood.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of like like,
efficiency we're bringing.
well, just even the anxiety around there are some things that we just can't miss, and
You answered.
we have no control, and now we're moving towards having a little bit
Because
more.
we've spent a lot of psychic energy talking about this, time and energy
Yes.
and worry that,
But there's a really specific, we had 3 days,
Yeah.
and every moment, Jesse, is it,
yeah.
do we have it? And it's like, oh, it got held up. And they're asking for documentation. I had to send documentation that we had an attorney review the agreement. We had to send documentation of all the board stuff, which is, I mean, I understand there's a level of accountability, and then there are pieces that if somebody on their side just misses it, or it's just, they're just not there, or something happens, we suffer for that. There's nothing that we can do other than come back for the next day and say we're hoping that, you know, things are gonna work out, so these are thank you for getting to the next read. So Jesse's gonna walk a little bit through the fiscal independence cost, and then potentially how we can recover those costs.
Thank you, Candace. So this presentation, this chart shows actually a combination of costs between fiscal independence and fiscal accountability. So you'll see the figures on operation about printing and checks from the previous chart. And then also in addition to that, the internal auditor we already have to honor the warrants. But some new things on this chart that was not in the previous chart are some personnel costs. For example, the additional technician for payroll, 2 additional technician for payroll, another more IT support in programming and business analysts, and we potentially have to. We're actually in the process of engaging with a consulting firm to help us get ready for the transition into fiscal accountability by kind of bridging our data to draw the data from LACO, bring all of our human resources data, payroll data into Banner so we can start testing and getting ready to be fiscally independent. So that's going to cost us some time and resources to get that piece ready. So other than that, we will also looking at saving potentially from not having to have LACO to hand deliver our checks every time we have checks. So that's going to save us a little bit of money. So without considering any type of potential investment earning, it might cost us about $340,000 to go towards this initiative.
So we would see this as an operational increase in our expenses. But Jesse, of course, is always super creative about how we can then gain those. So remember, our biggest contention, well, one of the largest contentions is just the efficiencies, but also our ability to invest our funds in ways in which the district thinks is prudent and generates more interest. And so Jesse walked through some costs, some calculations as well. Next slide. That may help to cover one back. There you go. So if we were to, so then we started to think about, well, now we'll be able to invest our funds, right? And so what could we potentially earn on that? So just is gonna walk through the additional revenue piece, which is the only extra little sort of rows that are added to the previous columns.
Yeah, that's right. So under the additional revenue, so let's say, LACO currently, as of the 3rd quarter, because the 4th quarter information has not yet been made available to us, they're giving us an interest rate of 3.37% on our cash balance. But market rate, as of today, we're seeing anything between 5% to 5.50 on a typical CD.
For what term?
So for this will be a six month to an annual term. Yeah, so if I just take the medium, the 5.25%, we're seeing on our average cash balance of 56 million, we're seeing about an increase in our potential revenue of a little over $1 million.
So a 6-month CD is enough liquidity?
We have a very healthy, cash balance. Yeah, so we'll be doing a combination, when we have the liberty, we could be considering many different strategies. We could consider a portion though to be a long-term CD, or any other type of investment, a short-term CD, or even a shorter term, maybe a 60 days type of investment. So we can level it into different type of investment.
If you give this, I don't know if you're gonna give this presentation to the full board?
We've already, we've already moved on the fiscal accountability piece. We've done that board presentation. You all approved the resolutions.
Yes.
When we decide to want to make the recommendation when we're ready for fiscal independence, yes, we would do another study session with the board around this piece.
Okay, then if we have that, all I would ask is you either put a negative number or brackets, put the
yeah.
negative.
Yep, makes sense.
Yeah.
But we're not here yet. We just wanted to give you all
Yes.
some perspective of where we're moving towards and what fiscal independence would allow the district, the benefits of fiscal independence, not only from the efficiency piece, but also the financial piece.
Let's say, ask one question and make, one comment. The question is, if we went to fiscal independence, would the internal auditor be mandatory, in perpetuity?
Yeah, the fiscal accountability and the fiscal independence requires an internal auditor.
That independent one that LACO chooses?
Both, no, but that was just are we ready for fiscal accountability?
Oh.
That's a one-time cost. But in terms of that, so the independent CPA survey is a one-time cost. The internal auditor that we currently have at the district is going to remain. It's required for us to have an internal auditor.
Okay, thank you. And then my comment is, these CE rates that you could get right now are higher than what we've experienced in the past and what we might experience in the future. But still, having said that, probably the spread between whatever LACO is going to pay us
Yes.
and what we could earn on CDs, that's probably a ongoing spread. So let's say interest rates settle back down again, LACO's going to lower what they're paying us, and that spread of roughly just under 200 bits, 2%, is probably still going to be there, favorable, so that savings, we aren't necessarily always going to earn 5.25%, but I think we could earn close to 200 bits higher. And then the CDs, that's the absolute, the most conservative rate, investment that you could make. So we could earn even a higher spread, not that I'm advocating for that, I'm saying this is the bare minimum conservative spread that we probably earn on an ongoing basis. And if you did a study and looked at what LACO has paid over the past 5, 10, 20 years, and compared that to what we could have earned just on CDs alone,
Well, is it
over the same
1.5%?
time period, we probably would have had the ability to earn that similar spread over that time period.
Here's how I would take what Jim just said and put it in context. So I looked on your sheet, and you have about $405,000 in additional personnel and check paying on there. Call it $450, round it up, $450. The county's charging you $250. So our expenses are going to go up $200K year after year. And the 150 and the 35 setup, you amortize that over 7, 10 years, it's all included in the 450. You have to clear 200K to make the deal make sense. Half of 1%, half of 1% on $56 million easily covers 200K.
Agreed.
So it's that, to me, it's that simple. So I don't know, the other question I have is you pick 56 million because that's what we have in the general fund today.
Yeah, and then that include all the other.
What about the other $330 million in funds? Can we not, when we go fiscally independent,
Yes.
Yeah, we're trying to be conservative.
Yeah, so if all we're talking about is 0.5% of 56 million, you need an infinitesimally small increase in rate under independence on 387 million to make the deal make sense, as long as you can really honestly manage it with the 4 additional people that you have on there and the internal auditor that we have.
Why do you not have the salary of the internal auditor up there?
It's already budgeted, and we already absorbed that cost today. We're trying to show what the new costs was.
It would be fair to show
Yeah.
some costs, because in all fairness, there's gonna be a certain percentage of that salary going to do this. So even if you're not using 100% of the internal audit because they're auditing other things, there will be a percentage of their time year after year
That's dedicated to new work.
that should be factored into the equation. I think it's still gonna come out very favorably based on the margin of 0.5% breaks it even or less. So,
And John, you could make the argument that they're already auditing these things. The only difference is the paymaster penalty.
well, I would say you're losing the benefit of them auditing other things that they're supposed to be auditing, which is why we have a full-time position, because now a certain percentage of their time will be going to this new venture to audit. So in a kind of a cost accounting mentality, you need to allocate, at least for the analysis, some portion of their time that would now go to this new venture, but it's still gonna sing. It's still gonna sing.
Opera?
Yeah, it's still gonna sing in harmony to do the deal if you can just justify the smallest increment in return. And then that goes to your cash flow management, and if you can include these other funds, where some of these funds are slower in turnaround, therefore can go out in longer term investments, bringing higher marginal returns, that would even make more sense.
I think when we get to the point where we ask the board for formal approval, I think there's a piece of the investment, recommendations that I think we would want the board to see and weigh in on at that point. I don't think we're there yet. I think this is just estimates of that, but there's some piece, just like we've done previously, that, we have a lot of, not only internal sort of fiscal, expertise. We always weigh on our fiscal, folks who help the district, in any one of these deals. I think we would do a brief package of what our intentions and where we could invest these funds in the future. I think that would be a part of that fiscal accountability recommendation package.
So, do you need anything from us tonight?
No, we just wanted to make sure, the question came up at the last
And I
budget
think
and
I
audit.
asked it,
You
and
did?
you pretty much laid it out here, and
Yes.
the only thing I did differently was give you a subtotal on expense and a
Yep.
margin on the
Yep.
250 LA County, and then use that to,
Correct. We have everything that we
Funding gap.
need today for fiscal accountability already.
not to mention the other benefits we're not talking about, like turnaround and,
Correct.
okay,
The anxiety tax.
great. So anything further from the members or the staff on this topic?
Nothing further?
Just one thing that you could consider on fiscal accountability or fiscal independence is we could also consider buying, bonding insurance or, what's the right term, John, this for,
Yeah, I know what you mean.
it's a fraud insurance.
It's a fraud and
Something
crime,
worth
crime and
having.
fraud, yeah, I know what you mean.
Like directors and officers?
It's a little different, that's a little different,
It's like
it's
the
really
records and
crime,
officers,
I think
but it's
mine's
really
called
for
crime.
employees that are managing the cash.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'll get back to you with the name of that
Crime
specific type of insurance.
fiduciary or
You could
something.
Consider that.
Yeah,
It would
no, that's a
be
good
well
point,
worth
you're gonna have to do
it,
that,
Mm-hmm.
if we don't already, you might already have it.
We do.
That would, I would
Jesse and I are the bonded.
think, yeah.
Thank you. It's a bonded insurance of
Mhm.
the people handling the cash.
All right.
Okay.
And you know, sometimes it's not even just the people managing, sometimes you're doing everything right and, you know, positive, you're not using positive pay and things like that. Okay, I think proposed meeting schedule.
Next meeting will take place February 14th.
February 4th, that's right.
That's right.
Oh, on Valentine's Day.
My wife is gonna be so
Valentine's
excited.
Day.
Okay, proposed future agenda items.
Do we have anything to talk about?
Most of mine have been addressed, getting the PARS reports as normal. I appreciate it just for the other members. The reason I'm rattling off like I'm Mr. Know-it-all tonight is because the staff handed me cash balance report on all our funds right before the meeting. Which makes me all of a sudden look really smart when all I'm doing is just reading off the page. But this was really helpful to know. And as you know, what I'd like to hear in these meetings is a box number or a rectangle number.
Martin's rectangle.
Yeah, I guess we won't call it the Coben box here.
No, it's a Martin rectangle.
The Martin rectangle number, which I can report to the board is our estimated variance ended year, positive or negative on budget. And the inside word on that, based on the latest reports, which obviously we're halfway through the year, is about 7.5 million, right? Is that what you said? That's the number I saw. So I appreciate knowing that because we're trying to figure out all these pieces and what they mean, and it's nice to know that things are trending the right way, and at least for this year. Okay, so I don't think other than the usuals, I think we're pretty good, it sounds like.
John?
Yes.
Does it make sense to do a report at our next meeting on the governor's January 10th proposed budget and how that impacts community college funding, generally, and PCC specifically?
Okay, sounds like you'd like that.
Well, is there anything else we need to discuss at the February 14th meeting?
We'll have the 311.
Oh, okay. All right.
Oh, you're trying to,
It should be back to a normal hour meeting though, instead of our usual lately 2-hour meetings. I would hope.
Reservations for a little later.
Tammy, do you have Valentine's Day plans? Might we?
Not yet, but I was optimistic. I'm optimistic.
Right, might we consider another nearby date but not the 14th specifically?
Well, if we're really done by 6, that's fine. If we can,
311 comes through here when it needs to come through here. So in essence, if you all wanted, this being the January, you know, I think we could skip a February and just pick it up in March. I think it's whatever's best for you all.
we need
Of course,
approval.
Jim and I are 2/3 of the committee and we won't be here in April. Unless you do.
oh,
Yeah, I don't mind having a meeting in February, but I suggest for everybody that they would have it near the 14th, but not on the 14th. This is a suggestion. We can-
no, Julie, I'm okay with the 14th unless you're not, if we can really be done.
Or we could
never
start,
been.
what about starting at 4?
I actually have a foundation board meeting.
Okay, so
from
it has
4
to
to
start
5.
5 to 6. Jim, does that work for you or does that problem for you?
Well, it does. I'm going to suggest that Audrey send out a Google poll and see what works and find a nearby date.
Okay,
Or,
because just detailed up here, Jim. If that's a problem for you, we should do that. If it's not a problem for you, it sounds like the 5 to 6 time works for Tammy, it certainly works.
Well, it's not just the three of us, it's everybody else that attends this meeting too.
Oh, well, that's true. So, okay, I'm looking at faces and saying put out a doodle poll, because I see faces that have.
Everyone loves.
I see faces that have Valentine's, so. Okay, well, good point, I'm sorry, I didn't think of that. So, we'll put out a doodle poll. You do it.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, okay, I can just see these faces. Okay, I think that brings us to adjournment, unless there's something else. Okay, we are adjourned, thank you all.
Do you need a
Thank you,
motion?
everybody.
Do we need a